Welcome to the Cosmic Business Breakthrough Podcast. I'm your host, Sophia Pallas, and this podcast is for soulful entrepreneurs who want to harness the cosmic power of astrology to elevate their message, unlock flow, and attract their best clients ever. Join me every week and get excited to discover how you can use the energy of the cosmos to get the business breakthrough you've been waiting for. Who doesn't want more abundance and expansion? It sounds like a pretty good thing to have in your life and business, doesn't it? And that's why today we are going to talk about the big guy, the planet Jupiter, the king of the gods, also known as Zeus in Greek mythology, Jupiter in Roman mythology. Jupiter is the planet that we look to bring us the goods. But it's important to know that expansion and abundance can also mean an expansion and abundance of things we don't necessarily want. So that's why it's so important to learn about what the planet Jupiter is doing and activating in your chart and in the sky at the moment, so that you can work with it in the most positive and productive ways and really use the opportunities that the planet Jupiter brings us, because that's what it does. It brings opportunity. It doesn't necessarily bring gifts. It brings opportunity to create these gifts of abundance and expansion in our lives and businesses. So let's dive in to a bit of an exploration of the planet Jupiter. If you have worked with me before, or you've listened to this podcast, or you've seen a few of my other videos, you probably know that Jupiter transits are generally more fun than the rest. And that is because it is that planet of expansion, abundance, higher learning, wisdom, philosophy, but also joy and exuberance and all the good stuff, really. It is what's called a benefic planet, a planet that brings benefits. Now, what you need to know about Jupiter at the moment is that it is moving through 2 signs over the next few months. So this is actually going to be activating 2 houses in your birth chart. I'm not going to dive into how this is going to affect every single house of your birth chart, but I will take you through a few examples so that you understand what kinds of opportunities are available when Jupiter comes around. In traditional astrology, Jupiter rules the zodiac signs Pisces and Sagittarius. In modern astrology, it only rules Sagittarius and Neptune rules Pisces. But in traditional astrology, which is the type of astrology that I work with, it rules both Sagittarius and Pisces. So if you have a Sagittarius rising or strong Sagittarius or Pisces rising or Pisces energy in your chart, you have Jupiter as your ruling planet. And that is awesome, because that means that there are loads of opportunities for you to use in order to achieve that growth and expansion. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that someone without a Jupiter-ruled chart can't do those things. Jupiter is playing a role in everybody's chart, but for you, you might find that those gifts are a little more accessible, or the opportunities come around more frequently than for other people. So the places Jupiter's been hanging out lately are Pisces and Aries. Let's start with Pisces because Jupiter rules Pisces. In Pisces, Jupiter expands our awareness of our spirituality and our compassion. It encourages us to give of ourselves and to embrace things like our imagination, our visualization, to really get into what dreams and hopes we have for our future. We're more spiritually open when Jupiter is in Pisces, but because Pisces is a sign that has a little less boundary, it's more open, watery, flowing energy. So when Jupiter is there, we can feel that we need a little extra space and time to ourselves to reset, recoup our energy, because Jupiter is expanding that boundarylessness of Pisces. So that's something to be aware of. And that's something that we've experienced. We experienced this at the beginning of the year up until May. And then Jupiter moved into Aries. And then Jupiter will dip back into Pisces at the end of the year. And then will be all systems go again in Aries from the end of December. So this is very different energy though. Jupiter in Pisces is that watery, dreamy, imaginative visualization type stuff. Jupiter in Aries is go. It is enthusiasm. It is daring. It is a quickening of the pace. This is really about putting those visualizations, those dreams into reality and diving headfirst into something, which is what Aries energy loves to do. So you're going to experience that enthusiasm the most in whatever house of your chart contains Aries. You are going to want to dive headfirst into something, and that all depends on where it's happening in your chart. Now, if you listen to my episode on the 12 houses, this will make a lot more sense to you. So I really encourage you to go back. If you're like, what is she talking about with this house thing? Go and listen to that episode on the 12 houses. I think it's episode 10, and that will explain more of what I'm talking about, because each house in our chart represents a different aspect of the human experience. So wherever Jupiter falls right now, that particular part of your experience is going to be activated. Calling all astro-curious entrepreneurs, I want to let you know about a really exciting workshop, and that is the 3 cosmic events you need to know before the close of 2022. Now, this is an action-packed 90-minute masterclass that's going to take you on a deep dive into how this energy and these 3 cosmic events are going to specifically affect you by your rising sign. So this is a sign-by-sign breakdown on the cosmic energy of the last quarter of 2022. And you're going to want to know these 3 key events and how to navigate them in your business based on your rising sign, so that you can make the most of any launches, promotions, new offers that you have coming up. All the details and how to sign up will be in the show notes, so check it out, and I hope to see you there. So let's talk about a few examples of what Jupiter can feel like when it activates specific houses, particularly work or business related houses in your chart. So let's talk about the first house, first of all, because that is, as I've said many times before, your personal brand, your self-expression, which is really important in business. So if you are Pisces or an Aries rising, you've had Jupiter hanging out in your first house of self for a big chunk of this year. So if you've got a Pisces rising, Jupiter's been hanging out there in the first half of the year. If you have an Aries rising, Jupiter's been hanging out there since May. This is giving a nice big boost to your self-expression and your personal brand. So this type of thing means you might have felt more magnetic than usual. You might have noticed a few more opportunities coming your way for you to shine in your trademark style. This is a great transit for business because it's going to give you the chance to take center stage for a little while. You might feel more confident and relaxed in yourself. You feel more optimistic, and you're just kind of ready to take on the world. If you're an Aries rising and you're experiencing this at the moment, you're ready to take on the world even more than usual, because Aries risings are ready to take on the world. There can be a bit of a tendency to overdo or overindulge in things though when Jupiter visits your first house. So just be aware of this. You might have a sweet tooth, and that might be amplified when Jupiter's hanging out there. Or, you just generally, you just want to do all the things. So this is a really great time for personal growth and for business success. It's a really great time for getting yourself out there, for feeling energized in yourself, to put yourself forward for things. So that is, first of all, a great place for Jupiter to be for your business. Let's look at another spot. If you are a Gemini rising, you've had Jupiter gracing your 10th and 11th houses, which is really giving a boost to your career and your public reputation. This doesn't mean you necessarily feel like an overnight success, but when Jupiter buzzes through this part of your chart, something you've been working on for a while can really come to pass. Like, this is an opportunity for something beneficial to come to pass if you've been working with it, right? So maybe you finally get that increased public recognition you've been working on. You know, maybe your PR plans finally pay off and you start to see yourself being published. Maybe your career status has changed in some way for the better. You know, maybe something in your title changes, but it gives you that extra boost. Maybe you get a promotion. If you're not working for yourself, you're working in a company. Maybe you get a promotion and that kind of public recognition within the company, or maybe you give yourself a promotion. That can also happen. You know, there's some sort of expansion or growth or renewal coming through your public persona. And also with its transit through the 11th house, your groups and networks and communities, there's also a bit of a boost to that. So you might have really great opportunities within your network. Maybe doors are opening for you that weren't available to you before. Things like that happen when Jupiter goes through that sector of your life or your business. Now, let's talk about a couple of places where not that Jupiter doesn't necessarily bring bad things, but when Jupiter might be in a different type of house, it can bring different things to the table that you might traditionally not think of as great for business. So for instance, Jupiter in the 12th house. Now the 12th house is the house of hidden things. It is the behind the scenes of your business and your life. So Jupiter gracing this house doesn't feel like an active, visible benefit to you, but it can be this amazing renewal for your spiritual practices or those practices that really help you, understand yourself better or understand what's best for you or allow you to take a break and reset and retreat. Like there will be opportunities there presented, by Jupiter to give you that space for renewal and reset when Jupiter's hanging out in your 12th house. Before we wrap up, because I am not going to go through all of the houses, let's just talk about one other house, because this is a house that often gets a little bit neglected, and I think it's quite an important house when it comes to business, and that is the 8th house. So when Jupiter is in your 8th house, you might be like right now, you might have experienced this as a Leo rising or as a Virgo rising. You've been experiencing Jupiter in your 8th house. Now, this is all about money, finances. I don't just mean the way you make money, but I mean the way you use and invest your money. It's also about how much value you place on other people's opinions. So this is a really, to me, critical place for business growth and success, because when you get to know how to best invest money, how to best use money in general, not necessarily how you make money, but how you use that money and how good you are with money. This is what the 8th house is there for. It's like, have you been paying attention to your investments, to your taxes, to your loans, to all of this money that's around you? That's not necessarily stuff that you've created yourself, but it's stuff that's important for you to work with. Maybe it's money from the government or for the government, or it's money from a loan, or it's money, it's money from the bank. It's money for your super. It's kind of other people's money that you need to be a good steward of, right? It can also be how you're attracting in collaborators, investors, that kind of thing in your business as well. So there's a lot of growth potential here in these kind of joint or shared finances. Maybe an investment finally pays off, or you get a nice chunky tax return, or maybe you get an opportunity to invest in something new. And that is a good opportunity because Jupiter is there. It's giving you a benefit in some way. Maybe you are doing some renovation in your business. And I don't mean like necessarily like a physical space renovation, but you might be really up-leveling some part of your business, and that might have to do with collecting money. You know, you might be upgrading your financial systems. You might be upgrading your bookkeeping systems. Like, this is where Jupiter comes in and goes, okay, let's give this a boost, right? So this is also a great time to think about affiliate promotions. You know, who is someone that you would love to affiliate with? That kind of thing. And on the flip side of the 8th house, so you've got the money and the investments and all of that stuff. But on the other side of the 8th house, we also have this psychological component of how much value are you placing on other people's opinions? And also, can you boost the intimacy in your collaborations? Because we're talking about business here, not just about personal life. I know that intimacy is not necessarily thought of as being business related, but more fulfillment in your client relationships and your personal relationships is always good for your personal energy and therefore your business. And also, you know, Jupiter here is really reminding you to take stock of your own value and to be really clear in that. Like, it isn't a transit through your house of self-worth. That's your 2nd house. But it is activating that axis of self and other, the 2nd and the 8th. You know, how I make resources, how I spend resources, how I use resources, how I invest resources. And it's not just physical, financial resources. It's also psychological resources. How much am I placing on others to validate me? Where can I be validating myself more? You know, where can I even be making more of the resources that I have gained through my business, the connections that I have gained, the collaborations that I have gained? How can I boost this area of business? I hope this makes sense and that you are understanding what Jupiter can do for you and what Jupiter can mean for you, because obviously we're talking about Jupiter transits right now. We're talking about Jupiter moving through the sky and activating parts of your chart. But it's important for you to also understand where Jupiter is in your birth chart, where it was when you were born, and that will give you a hint for where you want to and can really experience growth and expansion. So that is Jupiter in a nutshell. If you want to know more about Jupiter transits and what is coming up for the rest of 2022 and into 2023, I really encourage you to check out my workshop, 3 Cosmic Events You Need to Know Before the Close of 2022. That is available on my website. There will be a link in the show notes to access that workshop. That is a deep dive into Jupiter through all of the houses by rising sign. And it's also going to look at Saturn and Mars. And so those 3 key planetary transits that we're all experiencing in the rest of the year and into 2023, what you need to know and how to use those transits for the best in your business. Awesome. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. I am recording this on a Thursday, Jupiter's Day, very fitting. I hope you enjoy this episode. If you do, please give me a review on your app of choice, your podcast app of choice, and I'll be back very soon. Thanks for joining me on the Cosmic Business Breakthrough. If you'd like to learn more about what I do, head to sophiapalace.com or follow me at Sophia Palace over on Instagram. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, I'd love for you to take a moment and review the show if you found it helpful and share it with a few friends. Thanks again, and I'll speak to you next time.